The ELGND or E2RNs. The Galactic Union had long considered humans nothing more than myth, a tale told to frighten younglings or entertain patrons in dusty spaceport taverns. Ancient warriors from a forgotten world, the story said, who vanished as mysteriously as they appeared. Some scholars devoted their careers to proving humans had existed, but most civilized species dismissed them as folklore, creatures invented to explain phenomena the ancients couldn't understand. The Union, spanning 12,000 star systems across 3 spiral arms, had flourished for over 14 centuries without any evidence of these mythical beings. Their absence from galactic affairs had relegated them to the realm of legend. On the remote monitoring station of Outpost Theta 9, at the very edge of Union space, senior observer Nixera stared at her sensor readings with 6 eyes widening in disbelief. Her tentacles quivered as she recalibrated the equipment for the 4th time. "Director Voss," she called, voice trembling. "You need to see this." Voss, a towering Precarian with metallic scales that reflected the dim light of the monitoring station, lumbered over. His species was known for unflappable calm, but even he couldn't suppress a surprised clicking sound when he saw the readings. "How long?" he asked. 3 standard cycles. The signals began faintly, but they've grown stronger. "The pattern is unlike anything in our database." Voss studied the waveform. "Have you run it through the ancient archives?" "Yes, sir." "No matches in the primary database." Nixera hesitated, her skin flushing a deep purple. "But there was a partial match in the mythological records section." Voss's head ridge flared. "Which myth?" "The human transmission protocols, sir, from the pre-silence era." The room fell deadly quiet. Even the perpetual hum of the station's systems seemed to fade away. "That's impossible," Voss finally said. "Humans are a legend. A story." "Sir, with respect, the match is 97.8% accurate." Nixera's voice grew stronger. "And there's more. Long-range sensors have detected objects moving through the void beyond the Signis expanse. Ships, possibly. Massive ones. But they're not using any known propulsion method. They're just appearing, as if folding space itself." Voss stared at the readings, his ancient species instincts sending warning signals through his nervous system. "Send word to Central. Priority Alpha." And Nixera. He turned all 4 eyes to her. "Speak of this to no one else." 3 weeks later, the objects had advanced well into Union space, passing through the largely uninhabited Signis expanse. Their trajectory suggested they were heading toward the densely populated worlds of the inner spiral. The Galactic Union Council, representatives from over 300 species, gathered in emergency session on Axium Prime, the artificial ringworld that served as the Union's capital. The chamber buzzed with worried conversations in 100 different languages. High Chancellor Kovacs, an energy being contained in an ornate hovering vessel, called for order. "The reports from our observation posts are clear. These vessels, if that's what they are massive, unlike anything we've documented before." Admiral Genta, the Union's highest military commander, stepped forward. A member of the highly evolved insectoid Tlakeri, she projected holographic images above the council floor. "We estimate at least 37 distinct vessels, each approximately the size of a small moon. They maintain perfect formation and have ignored all attempts at communication." "What is their origin?" asked a counselor from the methane-breathing Voth Confederacy. "Unknown," Gente admitted. "They emerged from uncharted space beyond our borders." "Are they hostile?" The question came from a representative of the Quillari, a species known for their paranoia. "They've made no aggressive moves," Gente replied. "But they've been scanning our outposts as they pass. Their technology is confounding. Our sensors can barely penetrate their hulls." The council erupted in overlapping voices until Chancellor Kovacs pulsed a blinding light that immediately silenced the chamber. "There is one theory," Kovacs said reluctantly, "that our xenorchaeologists have put forward. It concerns an old legend. Surely you're not suggesting these are humans. The Quilleri representative laughed, a harsh coughing sound. Next, you'll tell us the World Eaters are returning as well. The signals match ancient human communication protocols, Klovox continued. And the few visual images we've captured of the vessels show designs consistent with historical records of human construction techniques. But humans vanished millennia ago, protested another counselor. If they ever existed at all. The debate might have continued indefinitely if the chamber's communication system hadn't suddenly activated on its own. Every screen in the council chamber flickered, then displayed the same image, a symbol that many recognized from ancient historical records. A blue sphere with white swirling patterns. Earth. A voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, though with an accent no living being had heard before. Attention, species of the Galactic Union. We are the United Earth Fleet. After 1,500 years of absence, humanity has returned to reclaim its place among the stars. We come in peace, but with purpose. Your governing body will prepare to receive our representatives within 3 standard days. The message ended as abruptly as it began, leaving the council in stunned silence. It seems, Chancellor Klovox said quietly, that the legends were true. The arrival of the human diplomatic vessel at Axium Prime drew crowds of onlookers. Compared to the massive ships that remained in formation at the edge of the system, this vessel was relatively small, merely the size of a Union heavy cruiser. The ship docked with impossible precision, and after a brief delay, a delegation of 5 humans emerged onto the ceremonial receiving platform where Chancellor Klovox and selected council members waited. The humans were tall, bipedal beings with varied skin tones and facial features. They wore simple, elegant uniforms of deep blue with that same planetary symbol on their chests. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed at odds with their solid forms. Their leader, a woman with dark skin and piercing eyes, stepped forward. I am Admiral Helena Chen of the United Earth Fleet. On behalf of humanity, I greet the Galactic Union in peace. Chancellor Klovox's containment vessel bobbed slightly in what passed for a formal bow. Admiral Chen, the Union welcomes you, though I must admit your arrival has caused considerable excitement. We understand, Chen replied with a slight smile. It's not every day that myths come to life. The delegation was escorted to the Grand Council chamber, where representatives from hundreds of species waited with varying degrees of curiosity, excitement, and fear. Admiral Chen stood before them, seemingly unintimidated by the assemblage of the galaxy's most powerful beings. For 15 centuries, you have believed humans to be legends, she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the vast chamber. Some of you doubted we ever existed. Others remembered us only as characters in ancient stories. You were wrong, but understandably so. She activated a holographic display that showed the Earth and its solar system. Humanity did not vanish by choice. We were forced into exile by a threat that targeted not just us, but potentially all sentient life. Rather than risk bringing destruction upon the nascent interstellar community, we chose to disappear. Images appeared of massive ships, similar to those now hovering at the edge of Union space, engaged in what appeared to be a fighting retreat from Earth. We used experimental technology to take our entire civilization beyond the reach of both the enemy and your ancestors. We folded space itself, tearing a hole in reality to escape to a pocket dimension where we could rebuild, advance, and prepare. The council chamber erupted in astonished murmurs. Space folding technology had been theorized, but never successfully implemented by Union scientists. For generations, we lived in isolation, developing technologies you can barely imagine. We watched from afar as the Union formed and grew. We observed your struggles and triumphs, and we continued to prepare for the day when we would return. Return for what purpose? Chancellor Klovox asked. Admiral Chen's expression grew grave. Because the threat that drove us away has never been eliminated. It has merely been dormant, waiting. And our sensors indicate it is awakening once more. She paused, Looking around the chamber at the representatives of hundreds of species, most of whom had until today believed humans were merely legends. We have returned because the galaxy will soon face an enemy it cannot comprehend, let alone defeat, without our help. On a distant planet at the edge of the Union, a team of tenorchaeologists had been excavating ruins believed to be over 20,000 years old. As news of the humans' return spread across the galaxy, Dr. Ilara Tin, the team's leader, made a startling connection. The ruins they had been studying weren't from some unknown ancient species as they had believed. The architecture, the few remaining artifacts, even the degraded data crystals they had recovered, all of it matched what little was known about human civilization before the silence. As she realized this, deep beneath the planet's surface, something responded to the news traveling through space. Ancient systems, dormant for millennia, began to power up. Warning signals flashed across screens that hadn't been viewed by living eyes since before the Union existed. The return protocol had been activated. The caretaker programs awakened. Something buried deep in the planet's core began to pulse with energy. Dr. Tyne felt the ground trembling beneath her feet. "Everyone out," she shouted to her team. Now, they barely escaped before the ancient facility began to transform, reconfiguring itself from ruins into something else entirely, a massive communications array that pointed toward the stars. As the archaeologists watched from a safe distance, a beam of energy shot upward from the facility, punching through the atmosphere and into space, a signal meant for the returning humans. Across the galaxy, on 57 different worlds, similar installations awakened. The human contingency plan, set in motion millennia ago, was now active. The legends hadn't just returned, they had never truly left. They had merely been waiting, preparing in the shadows for the right moment to emerge once more. And now, as their massive ships hung in the skies of the Union's worlds, the galaxy was forced to confront a reality they had dismissed as myth. Humans were real. They were powerful. And they had returned with a warning that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The age of legends was over. The age of humanity had begun anew. The Risi-Keoning. The council chamber remained deathly silent as Admiral Helena Chen's words hung in the air. The enemy she spoke of wasn't named, but the fear in her eyes told the gathered representatives everything they needed to know. "What is this threat?" Chancellor Kovacs finally asked, energy form pulsing with concern. Admiral Chen nodded to one of her companions, who projected a new hologram. It showed what appeared to be empty space, but as the image enhanced, tiny motes of darkness became visible, blacker than the void around them, absorbing rather than reflecting light. "We call them the Void Eaters," Chen explained. "They're not a species as you understand the concept. They're an ancient consciousness that exists partially outside normal spacetime. They consume energy, all energy, including the bioelectric patterns that make up sentient thought." The hologram shifted to show a planet teeming with life, then the approach of these dark entities. Within moments, the world was left barren, every trace of life and energy stripped away. 1,500 years ago, they discovered Earth. We fought, but conventional weapons were useless against them. They don't exist fully in our reality. You can't destroy what you can't completely perceive. Another counselor, a crystalline being from the Lyrax Confederation, spoke up. "If they're so powerful, how did humanity survive?" Chen's expression hardened. "We made sacrifices. Our greatest scientists and engineers developed technology to fold space itself, creating a pocket dimension where we could hide. But to power it, we needed energy. Enormous amounts of energy." She paused, the weight of history evident in her voice. "We harvested the energy of our own sun, diminishing it by nearly 15% in the process. Our world grew colder, darker. Millions died in the climate collapse that followed. But humanity survived." The implications stunned the council. The energy required to alter a star's output was beyond anything their science had achieved. "In our pocket dimension, time flowed differently," Chen continued. "What has been 15 centuries for you has been nearly 10,000 years for us. We've spent that time preparing, advancing, becoming something more than what we were. And now you've returned. Chancellor Kolvax observed. Which means, yes, Chen confirmed grimly. Our long-range sensors detected Void Eater activity at the edges of your territory. They're awakening from their dormancy. Soon, they'll begin feeding again. In the days that followed, the galaxy learned more about humanity than had been preserved in all its historical records. Most species reacted with a mixture of awe and fear as human representatives shared their history, their technological advancements, and the threat they had returned to face. What became increasingly clear was that humans possessed capabilities that bordered on the mystical to most Union species. Their mastery of quantum mechanics, gravity manipulation, and dimensional engineering far outstripped even the most advanced Union technologies. On the observation deck of the Union flagship, Eternal Vigilance, Admiral Genta watched as human engineers integrated their technology with Union systems. The modifications they made seemed deceptively simple, yet the power output tripled instantly. Your understanding of energy transfer is remarkable, she commented to Commander Erickson, the human liaison. Erickson, a tall man with weathered features, shrugged. 10 millennia of necessity breeds innovation, Admiral. When your entire species lives in a pocket dimension with limited resources, you learn to maximize efficiency. And your weapons? Genta asked, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Erickson's expression darkened. Let's hope we don't need to demonstrate those. But hope proved futile. 3 days later, the first confirmed Void Eater attack occurred at a mining outpost in the Callisto sector. By the time the nearest Union patrol arrived, all that remained was a dead husk of the station. Every living being, every power source drained completely. The attack galvanized the Union Council. Even the most skeptical members could no longer deny the threat. Plans for a joint human-Union defense force were hastily approved. At the Union military headquarters on Axium Prime, representatives from the 50 most powerful species gathered with human military leaders to form a strategy. General Vero Catal of the Vax Imperium, a reptilian known for tactical brilliance, voiced what many were thinking. If conventional weapons are useless against these Void Eaters, what possible defense can we mount? Admiral Chen stepped forward. The Void Eaters exist partially outside normal spacetime, which makes them nearly invulnerable to physical attacks. But their intrusion into our reality creates a vulnerability, a resonance pattern that can be detected and exploited. She activated a holographic display showing complex equations and waveforms. We've developed weapons that can target this resonance, forcing the Void Eaters fully into our dimension, where they become vulnerable. And these weapons, General Catal pressed, your fleet carries them. Some, Chen acknowledged, but not enough to defend the entire Union. That's why we need your help. With our knowledge and your industrial capacity, we can arm enough ships to create a viable defense network. The alliance was formed that day, humanity, and the Galactic Union united against an enemy that threatened all sentient life. Production facilities across 1,000 worlds began manufacturing components to human specifications. Union ships were retrofitted with human technology, and at the edge of known space, the first defensive line was established. None too soon. The Void Eaters' next attack came not at the periphery, but deep within Union territory, the agricultural world of Neuterfall, home to over 3 billion sentient beings. The planet's automated defense systems detected the approach of the Void Eaters, hundreds of them, moving faster than any natural phenomenon. Distress calls flooded Union channels. The nearest military forces were hours away. But humanity had anticipated this. 3 of their massive vessels, which had been positioned strategically throughout Union space, folded into existence above Neuterfall within minutes of the alarm. From observation posts across the sector, Union officials watched in awe as the human vessels deployed their defenses. The ships didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they generated massive energy fields that pulsed with a strange, shifting resonance. When the Void Eaters encountered these fields, something extraordinary happened. The dark entities, normally amorphous and ethereal, were forced into coherent forms, twisted, geometrically impossible shapes that nonetheless had definable boundaries. Only then did the human ships open fire, their weapons releasing bursts of what appeared to be concentrated white fire that tore through the now vulnerable Void Eaters. The entities emitted no sound as they were destroyed, but sensors detected energy dispersal patterns unlike anything Union scientists had recorded before. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When it was over, the Void Eater attack had been completely neutralized. Not a single one reached Neuterfall's atmosphere. Across the Union, the news spread rapidly. Humans, the beings of legend, had just saved billions of lives using technology that seemed like magic to most observers. But the victory came with a sobering revelation. Analysis of the battle showed that the Void Eaters had been testing defenses, sacrificing a small number of their kind to gather intelligence. The main body of their collective remained hidden, watching, learning. The real war had yet to begin. In the secured war room beneath Union headquarters, Admiral Chen met with the highest-ranking officials from both human and Union forces. Holographic displays showed the locations of all detected Void Eater activity and the positioning of defensive forces. They're probing for weaknesses, Chen explained, highlighting attack patterns. Each incursion is more sophisticated than the last. They're adaptive, a collective intelligence that learns from every encounter. Admiral Genta clicked her mandibles in concern. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in the Signis Void. Energy fluctuations consistent with what you've described as Void Eater communication patterns. Chen studied the readings, her expression grim. They're gathering, preparing for a coordinated assault. General Kital leaned forward, his scaled hands clasped tightly. Can we strike first? Take the battle to them. No, Chen replied firmly. The Void is their domain. We'd be at a severe disadvantage fighting them there. So we wait for them to attack. Kital's frustration was evident. Chen's eyes gleamed with a determination that reminded everyone present why humans had survived against impossible odds. We don't wait. We prepare, and we set a trap. The plan was audacious, even by human standards. Using the ancient facilities that had activated upon humanity's return, they would create a network of energy signatures designed to attract the Void Eaters, drawing them to specific locations where the combined human Union fleet would be waiting. For 2 weeks, engineers from 100 species worked alongside humans to prepare the trap. Ships were positioned strategically. The resonance weapons were distributed among Union vessels whose crews had been hastily trained in their use. And then they activated the network. The energy signatures pulsed across space, a siren call to the hunger of the Void Eaters. Almost immediately, sensors detected movement in the Signis Void. Thousands of the entities, more than anyone had anticipated, streaming toward the nearest energy signature. They took the bait, Admiral Genta reported from her command ship. All units, prepare for engagement. The Void Eaters moved with purpose, their collective intelligence recognizing the opportunity for a massive feeding. They converged on the trap site, an uninhabited system with a dying star, chosen specifically to minimize collateral damage if the plan failed. As the entities entered the system, the human Union fleet held position, waiting for the perfect moment. The Void Eaters, sensing the abundance of energy, accelerated toward what they perceived as an easy feast. Admiral Chen's voice came clear across all communication channels. All ships, activate resonance fields. Standard attack pattern. Remember your training. Across 2,000 ships, energy fields pulsed to life, creating a massive interconnected web of resonance that enveloped the incoming Void Eaters. As before, the entities were forced into coherent form. But this time, there were thousands of them, their twisted shapes writhing as they found themselves suddenly vulnerable. All ships opened fire. The combined fleet unleashed their weapons. Beams of concentrated energy tore through the now solid forms of the Void Eaters. Explosions rippled across space as the entities were destroyed one after another. But the Void Eaters weren't defenseless. Those that escaped the initial barrage adapted quickly, changing their approach. Some merged together, forming larger entities that could withstand the resonance effect. Others sacrificed themselves to create gaps in the defense network, allowing their brethren to slip through. They're adapting faster than anticipated, Chen reported. Adjust resonance frequencies according to Protocol 7. The battle raged for hours, the largest space engagement in Union history. Ships were lost on both sides. Union vessels torn apart by Void Eaters that managed to breach their shields, and Void Eaters destroyed by the increasingly accurate fire of the Allied fleet. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of combat, the tide began to turn. The Void Eaters, for all their adaptability, couldn't counter the constantly shifting resonance fields that the human ships coordinated. Their numbers thinned, then dwindled. When the last of the entities had been destroyed or driven off, a cheer went up across the fleet. They had won, at great cost, but they had won. Or so they thought. As the celebration began, Admiral Chen's voice cut through the comm channels, sharp with urgency. All ships, full power to shields. Brace for dimensional breach. Before anyone could react, space itself seemed to tear open at the center of the battlefield. A rift appeared, not the controlled, precise dimensional folding that human ships used, but a ragged wound in reality. From this breach emerged something that defied description, a mass of writhing darkness larger than a planet, pulsing with malevolent awareness. The Void Eater Collective, the core consciousness that controlled all the lesser entities. Ships nearest to the breach were instantly drained of power, their crews falling silent as their life energy was consumed. The resonance weapons seemed ineffective against this much larger, more complex entity. Fall back, Admiral Genta ordered, but it was clear that retreat would only delay the inevitable. The collective was too powerful, too hungry. It would consume them all, then move on to the populated worlds of the Union. In that moment of desperation, Admiral Chen made a decision that would forever cement humanity's place in galactic history. "This ends now," she declared, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "All human vessels, prepare for Prometheus Protocol." General Catal's voice came through, confused. "What is Prometheus Protocol?" Chen didn't answer him directly. Instead, she addressed all ships. "All Union vessels, withdraw to minimum safe distance immediately. I repeat, withdraw immediately." As the Union ships retreated, the 7 largest human vessels moved into formation around the Void Eater Collective. Their engines flared with energy unlike anything seen before, not the blue-white of standard drives, but a golden radiance that seemed to bend light itself. 10,000 years, Chen said quietly, though her words were transmitted to every ship. 10,000 years we prepared for this moment. We knew they would follow us back eventually. The human ships began to pulse in perfect synchronization, the golden energy flowing between them, creating a perfect geometric pattern around the collective. "What you're about to witness," Chen continued, "is why humanity chose exile. Why we sacrificed so much. This technology, it comes with a price." The energy pattern strengthened, forming a complete enclosure around the Void Eater Collective. The massive entity seemed to sense the danger, tendrils of darkness lashing out against the energy barrier, but unable to penetrate it. Dimensional collapse in 3, 2, 1. The human ships released a final blinding pulse of energy. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, reality itself appeared to fold inward at the point where the Void Eater Collective writhed. Space twisted, compressed, and then a flash of light brighter than a supernova erupted across the battlefield. When it faded, both the Void Eater Collective and the 7 human ships were gone. In their place was nothing. Not empty space, but a perfect absence. A sphere where sensors registered neither matter nor energy, nor even the fabric of space-time itself. They collapsed the dimensional boundaries, one of the Union scientists explained in awe. Created a null space that exists outside our reality. They've trapped the collective in a prison between dimensions. And the human ships? Admiral Genta asked. The scientist's voice was somber. They had to go with it. Someone had to guide the collapse from inside. 7 ships. Over 20,000 human lives sacrificed in an instant to save trillions across the galaxy. In the aftermath of what would come to be known as the Battle of Signis Void, the galaxy changed forever. The threat of the Void Eaters had been eliminated, their collective consciousness trapped in a dimensional prison from which there was no escape. Humanity, once dismissed as legend, now stood revealed as the galaxy's saviors. Their sacrifice, not just at Signis Void, but throughout their long exile, earned them the respect and gratitude of every species in the Union. 1 month after the battle, a formal ceremony was held on Axium Prime. The remaining human fleet hovered above the ringworld, their massive ships now a welcome sight in Union skies. Representatives from all member species gathered to witness the signing of the Terran Accords, which welcomed humanity as full members of the Galactic Union, with special status as protectors of the dimensional boundaries. Admiral Chen, representing Earth and all human colonies, stood before the assembled dignitaries. For millennia, we existed as legends in your histories. Today, we step out of myth and into a shared future. The threat that forced us into exile has been contained, but the universe holds many dangers. Together, we will face them. Chancellor Kulvox's energy form pulsed with solemn colors as he spoke. The Union acknowledges the debt we owe to humanity, a debt that can never truly be repaid. Your sacrifice has saved all sentient life in our galaxy. Your technology, your wisdom, your courage. These gifts you bring back from exile will help forge a stronger union for all. As the ceremony concluded, a new memorial was unveiled, a massive sculpture in the center of Axium Prime depicting the 7 human ships that had sacrificed themselves to trap the Void Eater collective. Beneath it, inscribed in the languages of all Union species, were the words, "They were legend made real. They returned from exile not seeking glory, but bringing salvation. Let their sacrifice remind us that together we are stronger than any darkness." Far beyond the edges of Union space, in a pocket dimension that had been home to humanity for 10 millennia, preparations were already underway. While a significant portion of human ships and personnel had returned to normal space, billions still remained in their dimensional refuge. In a secure chamber deep within Earth's relocated lunar base, the High Council of Humanity reviewed the data from the Signis Void battle. "The containment is holding," reported Dr. Eliza Shin, head of dimensional research. "The null space prison should remain stable for at least 50,000 years. Council Elder Marcus Wei nodded gravely. "And after that?" "After that," Shin admitted, "we can't be certain. The collective may eventually find a way to erode the dimensional boundaries." Wei looked around at his fellow council members. "Then our work isn't done. Our return to the galaxy is just the beginning." "What do you propose?" asked another elder. Wei's expression was determined, carrying the weight of a civilization that had sacrificed everything once and would do so again if necessary. "We continue as we have for 10,000 years. We prepare. We advance. We protect, not just ourselves, but all sentient life. The Void Eaters may be contained, but they aren't the only threat lurking between the stars." He stood, looking out at the simulated starfield that represented their original galaxy, the home they had partially returned to after so long in exile. "For millennia, we were legends. Now we're guardians, and legends never die."